Rolling. Silence, please.
Electric vehicles, the buzzword, the future of green mobility. Sorry.
The usual drill, huh?
Ayo. Ho gaya? Okay. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast today. Okay, so is it done? Is that okay? Thank you. Electric vehicles, the buzzword, the future of green mobility. A lot of companies are investing in this space. A lot of launches coming up as well. But how are they different from traditional vehicles? Are they really that green? Well, to answer all these queries, we have a very special guest with us on the Climate Clock podcast, the CEO and MD of Mercedes-Benz, Mr. Santosh Iyer. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast today.
Thanks for having me here. Thank you.
And as I said, it's the buzzword. Everyone's been talking about electric vehicles. You yourself, the company that is, have launched series of electric vehicle models as well. I just want to understand first up, practically, are we closer to the era where electric vehicles on the road would be more than the traditional vehicles?
So I think the total number of EVs on the road will still take time because there's a lot of pending population. We have been selling a combustion engine for so many years. So for EVs to overtake will take at least 10 to 15 years, if not less. But in terms of new car sales, today when you look at India, it's 1 to 1.5% of the cars sold are EVs. And when you talk about the luxury segment, it's around 5% now are EVs. So that's a big shift in terms of new car sales coming in and trying to replace the combustion engine. But it's only a matter of time, driven by legislation to some extent, because if you want to meet the very tough emission norms of the future, you have to almost go through zero tailpipe emission, and then combined with consumer interest and manufacturers like us who believe in a sustainable future, I think a combination of all three should accelerate much faster. But if I have to look at it, what's happening, 3 years back in 2020 when we launched the first EV, I was asked the question, why are you launching an EV in India? And today when we launch an EV, we just launched a new EQE SUV, that question is no longer there. Now at least they are asking what is your percentage, how farther you will go, how fast, as you said, will accelerate. So I think that the maturity is coming in, but there is still a bit of way to go.
So there is maturity coming in. So I wanted to ask the consumer perspective here. Is it more difficult to sell an EV in the times that we are in versus a traditional engine car?
No, for sure. For two reasons. First is if you ask any customer, and when I meet a lot of people, they all say, Santosh, my next car is an EV. So I'm happy because now the next car, whenever EV is the future. But then when I ask them, why not today? Because today there are, I won't say the entire range is available, but there are reasonable options, at the top end and at the midpoint of the spectrum. And then they say, no, then there is a list of myths coming out. And this list of myths, we can discuss now or later, but then that's the list coming up. The second point is the price point. The EVs are more expensive compared to combustion engines, and as long as that's there, though in the total cost of ownership, EVs are better because you don't have to start filling fuel there, and electricity is much cheaper. But the initial purchase price being higher, that puts people, okay, fine, maybe should I postpone? So these two elements actually don't make it very easy for adoption. It needs a lot of education for customers, but once somebody is in an EV, we have hardly seen them going back to combustion engines. They are a big convert, not only from the driving, from the overall feel, and they feel more responsible also going into an EV.
Yes, that's been the topic, right? You see those green plates and you feel good that, okay, at
Exactly.
least this is not something that's going to pollute the environment. So the next thing is that I just want to understand, as a person who's been tracking sustainability, do you think electric vehicles and traditional vehicles, they will have to coexist? Is that coexistence important as well in the world that we are living in?
Not really. I think electric technology has already come of age. So now EVs, it's a matter of time based on the consumer acceptance and also the infrastructure and all the other elements. I think we should be able to transition to a 100% EV ecosystem. As a company, we have said that by 2030, we will be putting the company into a position to be 100% EVs wherever markets allow. And 2030 is not far off. We are talking about 6 to 7 years from now. So because the final target picture is not EV. The final target picture is carbon neutrality. And here we have said that we have an ambition 2039. We would be one of the first automotive OEMs to go into a carbon neutral production, not only production, but the entire value chain when it comes to cars. And that's something, a big step. And we should achieve this 50% of this goal even by 2030. So we are not actually postponing, we are preponing targets. And if you compare that with the EU, which says 2050, or in India with a goal of 2070, I think as a company, Mercedes-Benz has set itself up for a very ambitious carbon neutrality goal.
Well, more power to you. Well, let's hope it does get achieved sooner than later. But then, in that case, there are a couple of things that we need to take care of as well. You spoke about how you'll be carbon neutral before what you have targeted, but an entire supply chain goes into that. We've been talking about lithium, cobalt, nickel, a lot of these materials, which are critical minerals, which are used in the production of battery, which is ultimately used in an EV. Is that something which could be a tricky situation here, because we are dependent on imports for that, right?
No, I think it's a very good question. Today, if you, let's say, look at combustion engines, right from steel, to the entire combustion engine manufacturing, foundry processes there. The fuel that we are using is again a fossil fuel which we are extracting and then using it. And similar arguments against the EV as of now. You have to extract rare earth minerals like lithium, cobalt. But the difference between combustion engine and EV, and this is the tipping point, at the end of 10, 15, 20 years, the batteries can be repurposed for storage. At the end of another 10 odd years, if the batteries are not now suitable for repurposing, even today, we are able to recycle 96% of those rare earth minerals and back to make a new battery. That means the cobalt, the lithium, all those rare earth minerals, 96% of them can be recycled and used, which is not possible in a combustion engine. Today, one, you dismantle the car. Secondly, the fuel that you are burning is gone, any which ways, and there is no, value left. So the circularity, when you compare an EV to a combustion engine, the circularity is significant. And what we say is, you have to mine your own car at the end of 15 years to make the new car. Whereas in the current traditional model, you will have to go for continue to mine steel, continue to get new foundry material. So there has been a lot of study on well-to-wheel, what time it takes to be fully carbon neutral. It's a big task for sure, but we are there. And as the 96% is not a future data, it's possible today. And we do that in our factory back in Germany. We are able, whatever batteries, if it goes back for any reason, we are able to extract 96% of that and again make a battery out of it.
Okay, that is so interesting. And there have been a lot of myths around EVs are not that safe, or I would say environment friendly, because there's a lot of mining. So you are saying that whatever is mined is basically put back to use, and that can be used again in order to ensure that there's circularity when we use electric vehicles.
Exactly.
That is an important clarification, because there have been, as you were talking about it earlier as well, right? A lot of myths around that.
See, I think we are still in the tipping point. A lot will further develop, but it's the same chicken and egg story. You can wait for everything to happen and then transition. Or at some point of time, we have transitioned. We have transitioned into mobile phones. Even today, you don't have the best network in many places, right? We struggle. I know personally, I know where to make a call, where not to make a call while going home, because I know there will be a drop. So we have learned to live with it. We have learned to live with a infrastructure which is not there, but it is a huge positive use for us, a mobile phone that we use. Similarly, EVs, I think if we really care for the environment, COVID was a very clear statement that when there were no cars on the road, when no vehicles, all those birds coming out, clean air, you can have seen those Instagram reels and stories, people saying, wow, I think we don't need any laboratories to prove us that automobile is a source. We being an OEM can shun away responsibility, or we can be responsible to say, fine, there is no immediate alternative to shift, but we have to shift. We have to shift to greener, zero-emitting vehicles, which is EV as of today. Maybe there are better technologies in the future, and therefore I don't want to say now the future will only be EV. Maybe in 2050 or 2070, there are new developments. But, as Mercedes-Benz, we invented the car 138 years back. We continue to invent it till today. And we feel even tomorrow we will reinvent. But today, EV is what we feel is the solution, at least for the next 15 to 20 years, till the time we find more solutions.
And there's no dearth of innovation, and you've proved it time and again. So in that case, what is EV as a percentage of your overall portfolio or sales right now? You spoke about how your targets will be when it comes to decarbonization. But 5 years down the line, what will EV contribute to your overall sales?
So globally, we are already at around 20% when you compare EVs and PHEVs and all those the battery-related technologies and cars. And we did just a huge number of cars Jan to September. In India, we are still, as I said, 4 to 5%. It's still nascent. One way to look at it is we are better than mass market, which is at 1.5. But I think should not be a rush for numbers at this stage. What you need is the customer education to ensure that once they now shift to an EV, we need to ensure they are in the ecosystem. We need to ensure charging is available when they are doing intra-city. A lot of customers are today buying it for in-city use, still fearing not to travel intercity. But, we have to set up charging. For example, Bombay to Goa. Now, I have a fast charger in Vashi. I have a fast charger in Pune. I have one in Kolhapur. I have one in Goa. So one need not plan travel. They can fearlessly take the car anywhere else. And I think these things also we should focus on. And the numbers is an outcome. I think at a point of time when you have the full product portfolio coming, when you have the right price points as well. And then also on the policy side, for example, Maharashtra is a forward-looking state. So it has a zero registration tax. Generally, it's 15 to 20% on cars. In Maharashtra, it's zero. But you go to Telangana, they have already 18% tax on EVs. You go to Gujarat, there is a 12 to 18% tax on EVs. So I think the policy on taxes also, once it becomes consistent, cost of ownership is there. The green number plate, as you said, is a great initiative by the government. This will accelerate transformation. So we have to be patient. We have to work on our basics, getting the right products, getting the right charging infrastructure, educating the customer, and I'm sure volumes will follow.
Okay, so that's a great approach also. So, you spoke about how people are thinking, okay, my next car would be EV. So, range anxiety, whether once I get into the car, I don't know how far it'll go once I charge it. So, some aspects of charging, how long does it take? And they also have the idea that once I charge it, if I don't use it, battery will die down. Is this something that happens?
So, see, the biggest culprit of an EV is a mobile phone, in my view, because all our whatever questions that you asked is what exactly a customer asks us, and it's because the usage. The mobile phone battery drains by evening. You use it or don't use it, the battery is going down. In a mobile phone, after 3 to 4 years, the life of the battery comes down. The cost of the mobile therefore comes down because the battery life is not there. And then, so all those myths. If you drop a mobile phone in the water, there is a problem. So you feel again there is an issue there. Therefore, if you look at an EV car battery, it's a completely different technology to start with. You can charge a car, and if you don't even use it for a month, the range may the range may drop by a percentage point. That's it.
Okay.
So the energy is stored. It doesn't deplete at a fast pace. Secondly, you use an EV in a traffic city like Bombay or any other cities in India, the range will be much higher because the more you are braking, you are generating charge.
Okay.
Actually, the range depletes in highways when you are doing the other way around. It's completely different to a combustion engine, where on a highway you may get a better mileage, as they say, compared to a city condition. So ideally in city, you get a better range compared to even intercity travel. Third, the life of the battery. These can last. Today we give a 10-year, 100,000 kilometers warranty on a battery. Even after that, for another 5-10 years, depending on the number of charges, these batteries just last. Let's assume what happens after that. Then these batteries can be sold with a very good price for secondary storage, because all these solar power, now India is doing a lot of play on green energy. So you will need batteries to store power for the night. And these are these car batteries which can be used. And again, there is a big life. And after that, you can again recycle and make a new battery. If 96% of the battery can be reutilized for making a new battery, imagine the price and the value of the battery will not degenerate. So the customer apprehension that my price and the value goes down and the residual value goes down is completely non-called for, and therefore we are now today giving guarantee. We are saying we will give you the same guarantee as a combustion engine after 5 years. So just keep that aside, start using. And the last one, a lot of people, the so-called green, once you start feeling, then they blame the infra. They say, Santosh, today a lot of energy generated is not renewable. So based on that, so how green is my EV? My simple answer is, today, by facts, 42% of India's energy is from renewable sources. That's big. It's as good as Europe. There is a clear ambition to go up to 50%. There is much more ambition to go to more and more non-fossil fuel base. Again, if you wait for 100% of energy to be generated from green, there is no, target landscape. And for that, you need green hydrogen coming in that will be supplied to power plants. You need certain other things coming up. So as a responsible customer, if you really believe in sustainability, you can start using an EV, even with the current power composition mix. We have done our research that if you drive an EV for 50,000 to 60,000 kilometers in the life cycle, you are already doing better than combustion engine. So, postponing it for blaming it on somebody, I think is more of a lazy approach and not taking the big step and being responsible.
But I have to say that to you, because you said that yes, the battery doesn't die. That's a big clarification, because there was a myth and people said that yes, it would if you don't use it for a long time. But the range anxiety still remains, also because, as you said, infrastructure has to develop across a lot of states. As Maharashtra is good policy wise, some states might not see that much of infrastructure development when it comes to charging. But once you charge, charge? On an average, how long can an EV go?
Wow, so we have our EQS, which is top of the line. The certified range is 857 kilometers and it goes more than 650 to 700 kilometers. I am using an EQS. I do Bombay Pune shuttle at least 3 to 4 times a month. I don't need to charge at all because for sure I have enough charge once I even go back. I've even taken the car to Goa, no issues there. Now you look at EQBs, I'm saying the in between segments. They even have 500, 550 kilometers of range. So technically, a normal Bombay Pune use case, you don't even need to charge. The biggest advantage of an EV is you can charge it because a car most of the time is idle at home or in office. So if you have, even AC chargers, you can charge the car. You can actually save the trip to the fuel station, and you don't need to charge it. Now, let's say you need to charge because you don't have a infrastructure at home, in office. You are relying on public infrastructure, and I think there is a lot of good work done by companies like Tata Power, Xeon, and to name a few. These guys have set up a lot of charging infrastructure and fast charging. So in our car, we have 180 kilowatt chargers installed at our dealership. You can charge the car in 15 minutes. Like a fuel pump, you come in, 20% to 80% charge can be in 15 minutes, which means you get 600-700 kilometers of range in 15 minutes time, and then you can proceed. So it's developing. To give you some numbers, India has 60,000 petrol pumps.
Right.
We have already 6,000 EV charging stations. But yes, the 6,000 EV charging stations are not of high quality because some of them have low kilowatt chargers. Some of the chargers are not functional, which is also, complaints by some of the customers that when they reach a charging station, it doesn't work. But it's all a matter of time. The good part is it's all coming up. We don't have 10% car park, but we have 10% of EV charging stations already, at least in number terms. So as and when, I'm sure there are a lot of businessmen in India who are investing in the EV charging space, a lot of startups, and it's today easily possible. We have done the Golden Quadrangle. We have taken the car to Kardungla Pass. We have done everything else to show that you can take the car in any part of India. The only thing is, maybe I would also admit you need a bit of planning. But can't you plan a bit for the environment? That's my only question. If you want to leave this planet for your children, for yourself, in a better way, can't you do that bit? That also not on a daily basis. Once in a while when you're doing intercity, you just need to plan, and it's available. And I think in a decent way across India.
Maybe when you go to Kardungla Pass in an EV, you will not see no snow on the mountains. There'll be snow because EVs have saved that bit of the environment as well. Absolutely. So in that case, what are your plans? Like any new launches this year, next year within the EV portfolio?
No, we just launched the EQE SUV. As I said, globally, there is a big demand for EV. So for us, we are in a situation where the global demand outstrips a bit of supply that we have in terms of EVs. And we want to introduce cars to the market where we are able to supply cars. There is no point in launching cars and then we don't have it. It only causes disappointment among customers. So we just introduced the EQE SUV. We are the first luxury brand to localize an EV in India. So we produce the EQS sedan in Chakan, in Pune. And then we have an EQB, which is a 7-seater EV, again around the 80 lakh price point. I think we are working a lot on infra, a lot on consumer education. This month, 26th of October is the World Sustainability Day. So we are celebrating a sustainability fest, and we are doing driver training programs. Chauffeurs today, they have so much, the guys, once they buy an EV, there is so much of anxiety to keep charging it. We say, hey, come on, it has range. When your fuel is showing half a liter, a half tank, you don't go to the petrol station. But here, the moment the car drops to 50%, they have this anxiety, okay, let me go and charge. So a lot of work happening in this month and in the future as well to educate customers. And I think volumes will come. It's just a matter of time.
Okay. So interestingly, you mentioned the word chauffeur as well, right? So Mercedes is a car which is usually chauffeur driven. In this case, are you seeing people want to drive it themselves when it comes to EVs?
I think in Mercedes-Benz also, even combustion engines, the weekends are driven by customers. They love cars. The weekdays, because of traffic, parking, and they also work in cars, they use chauffeurs for commute. So when it comes to EVs, definitely there is more driver-oriented because the thrill of driving is better. It's more hassle-free. The cars are also much better in terms of NVH, noise. You can work in the car, watch movies in the car in a much better environment compared to a combustion engines as such. So remember, I am saying this because because we make one of the world's best cars in the world, like the S-Class, which is a combustion engine. Then we make the EQS as well. But we are still confident that I think EVs is much more driver-oriented for sure. At the same time, it will take some time for EVs to be backseat-oriented because most of the technology is in the front. We have the hyper screen. These cars are made more for the European and the American setup where customers drive themselves. So it takes time, but on the EQS, we got customer feedback. We have already put a rear seat entertainment behind so that they can watch a Netflix movie when they are driving in their car.
Okay, so as a manufacturer, what are the biggest differences that you've seen in manufacturing an EV versus a IC engine car? Is it costlier to manufacture an EV?
For sure, I think the total cost of an EV is significantly high because of two reasons. One is, of course, the battery that we discussed. A lot of rare earth minerals, etc., materials go into it. And second, EV, we are also looking from recyclability. For example, my EQS has dashboards made out of fishing nets. I am using recycled plastic. Now, all this is also cost, though it sounds, it's nice and cheap, but it's not, because recycling also, you have to invest on some of them. So to make the car more efficient, tires, for example, are very different on an EV compared to a combustion engine because of the range that you want to get and all the sustainable materials that goes into the car. So definitely the suppliers are different, the manufacturing processes are different. We call it a high voltage organization because people who work on these cars, they need to be trained differently because there is also risk while you work on these batteries. Unlike engines where you can work with gloves or bare hands as such even. But in EVs, you need to really be cautious a bit while you work on these cars. So a lot of training, a lot of upskilling is required when it comes to EVs.
Okay, all right. So in that case, as we were speaking about some myths that people have, I read some of them. I got a lot of questions as well. So I would like you to bust some of these myths as well. So the first one is electric vehicles are uneconomical. What do you have to say about that?
I would say no way. At initial purchase price higher, but in the life cycle, it is much cheaper. In terms of running cost, it goes to the workshop once in 2 years compared to once a year for a combustion engine. So that answers a lot.
Okay, so we spoke about it, but still EV batteries last only few years. So that doesn't help the cause.
Yeah, that I clarified because EV batteries last long because I think 10 years we give a warranty. You can go up to 15-20 years. After that, it can be stored as recycled batteries for it can be used as storage. It can be repurposed. So there is value in the battery and it lasts long.
Okay, that is an important clarification, I think, because those were questions by actually, I would say, 10-12 viewers about the battery life. The emission impacts of an electric vehicle are more than a petrol or diesel vehicle.
As I said, we have done well-to-wheel study. Even if you use the current power, which, as I said, 42% of India's power is from non-fossil fuel based. And if you do a full calculation on this, with 60,000 odd kilometers of running an EV over the life cycle, not in 1 year, but over the life cycle, you are able to mitigate all the effects. And the EV is much cleaner to the environment. Of course, upfront, it gives you zero tailpipe emissions.
Okay, it also answers the question.
For these, I just say, go to the mall car park and stand there for a couple of minutes. The emission that you get, you don't feel comfortable. You have EVs around you. You can stand there. No issues because you don't feel it. So you don't need laboratory test. You don't need Google research. You can test yourself and then feel the difference.
Till the time they don't go to the mall, I'll ask them to watch the podcast and see this clarification from you, because that's very important. So you've already also answered that electric vehicles get the grid is not suited for electric vehicles. So that answers, because we have 42% coming in from renewables itself. Well, the last one is electric vehicles get damaged in waterlogged areas and are dangerous to charge in the rain.
So, our cars, I can talk about them. You can put them in 1 meter of water for half an hour, nothing will happen. So, to tell about damages, even combustion engines, if you go through water flooded areas, you get hydrostatic locks, and you have, during the monsoons in Bombay, you have many cars in workshops and stuff. But EVs is much better because here you don't have any moving parts. In a combustion engine, it actually sucks in water because from the air filter, because it is sucking in. Whereas in EV, there is nothing of that sort. They are made to the highest safety standards. Let me tell you, 3 days back, we crash tested two EVs in front of the public in Germany. We showed them that two EVs colliding with each other, the occupant safety was as good or better than the combustion engine. So we got all the star certified just to show that, because the risk of fires, the risk of thermal runway. So we said, what better than crashing two EVs head to head in front of public. So we have even demonstrated that to remove these myths and misconceptions.
Okay, all right. So thanks for clarifying that. Right now, when you're looking at the global markets, which is one of the biggest EV markets that you're seeing? Is it seen more in the US? Is it Europe? Where do we stand in the world ranking?
Well, so if I look at Europe, Europe would be still around 12%. I would say 6% odd if you take the whole continent. But if I look at Norway, it's around 80%, Sweden 32%. So there are countries within Europe which are very fast in electric transformation. Europe, I think, is 12%. US is at 6%. China is at 22% when it comes to EV penetration to the total sales. So different markets at different maturity levels. India, as I said, a mass market around 1.5. We luxury is around 5%, which is not bad. So I think it's a matter of time as we now move forward. There needs to be policy consistency. I think one of the key things, even in India, the government has a 5% GST on EVs compared to 48 to 50% on combustion engines. This policy has to continue till at least 2030 because this is one of the major advantage for customer to buy a car. The pricing is also much more aggressive in today's time. And if this continues, I think the adoption will happen faster with more education, more availability. Current EV consumers swearing by their cars and recommending other EV owners.
Okay, so I have to ask you as the last question, and you did mention it, that we need policy consistency. One, in terms of GST that you spoke about. We do have tax SOPs as well for an individual in terms of a tax rebate of 1.5 lakh if they go ahead and buy EV. Is there anything else that you think that the government should do, or the existing policies, as you said, should continue till a period of time?
I think one of the biggest advantages that very few people know, and this was told to me by one of the large tax consultants or firms in India. I just met them he said, Santosh, I bought it because EVs gives me 40% depreciation compared to a 15% on the combustion engine. So in 2-3 years, it is off my books and it is much better. So I said, wow. So I think the government has done its bit with GST. It has done its bit with depreciation because that's 80% of our customers, 70 to 80% buy on company name. So for them, this is a great investment because they can write it off and use the asset. The third thing is these state governments. And this is where there is an inconsistency between a Maharashtra to a Gujarat. And that has a major variation in terms of on-road pricing of the cars. So there we are still requesting state governments to have a pragmatic view. As I said, Maharashtra and Karnataka are great examples, but you have a Gujarat and a Telangana, not so great examples. Telangana actually had road tax concession. You won't believe our penetration was 10% there already. And then they withdrew it because of lack of budgets and subsidies. So I think the governments across have to really look in from a long-term view. And as long as they commit policy consistency, it's up to us as OEMs and private sector to really push the agenda, push the narrative. Our shareholders value us being completely carbon neutral. And therefore, we have a commitment and we need to drive this holistically.
Oh, no, absolutely. As I said earlier, more power to anybody, you and the other companies that are doing that. But I have to ask you one quick question. It came to my mind while I was having this conversation. Apart from Mercedes' EV, which is the other EV that you like from any other company?
I have a lot of respect for Tatas in India. Actually, for me, the Nexon actually is really a game changer in what they are doing in India. And I have driven that car. I have gone. I recommend a lot of people at this stage. Sometimes they say Mercedes, EVs. Should I? I say try because the use cases are similar, and I think that's a great product, and they have enhanced it beautifully, I would say.
Okay, that's an interesting answer. Thank you so much for joining us today on Climate Clock podcast and busting all these myths, because I'm sure a lot of the viewers who wrote to me earlier before the podcast also asked me to ask all of that to you. So thank you. It was a pleasure to have you with us on the show.
Thanks a lot for having me. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll take your leave on this edition of Climate Clock podcast. Stay tuned for more news and updates.